stuff going
What
on
am I
the
saying? I have a
calendar.
floodlight heat. That thing used to burn out for like 2 months.
I very well
It was like
could be.
totally out of
Changed about
control.
3 years
But you know,
ago.
when I pay,
That thing is
$7 a
haven't
bulb, you
burnt
should be able
out.
to withstand.
I
I
replaced all
do
my
have to
outdoor lights
blame
with
some of
LED.
that on.
Considering you can't.
Alrighty, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. This is November 13, 2014, and if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Our next agenda item is public input. Do we have any public input tonight? All right, hearing none. Review and additions to the agenda. I am not aware of any changes, so we can move on. Minutes. I just realized tonight that I did not forward the minutes on Monday. I seem to have a block about that. I did forward them, and I forwarded it twice tonight. Once, the first time it was a Google document, and some people had trouble opening it, so then I forwarded it as a Word document, and that seems to work for you if you can't open the Google Doc. So we'll save those for next week, when everybody has a chance to read them. Correspondence. This week we had our end of the year financials from the school district that should have been forwarded to everybody. We had, let's see, we had an update on gas futures from Mr. Byron. We had, what else did we have? I think that was it.
No, also from the school. as
Oh,
far as
yeah,
tours.
we had, that's right, I forwarded about tours. I've only heard from
Dan.
2 people. Dan can go, someone else can't make it, I haven't heard from anybody else. Actually, I think Frank can't make it either. So, I need to know how many people, if anybody can make it. If not, we'll work on another time slot. It was, next,
Wednesday and
Thursday,
between
and
4 and
from
6.
4 to 6. No, it doesn't work? Does work?
Yep.
1, 2 works, not, doesn't, does, no,
Right now it doesn't, but
okay.
if it changes, I'll.
Do we want to try a,
Don't schedule.
I was gonna say, do we want to see how many people can go that day, and if possible, maybe people can schedule some individual if they,
Yeah, I mean, just let me know as far as what the numbers are and who can go. And
okay, it sounds right.
Sounds like 3 maybe.
3, maybe 4, yeah, I can go, so.
Later in the day is better for me, so.
Yeah, I think 4 to 6 was an effort to try to make it as late as possible, considering the schedule of the school employees, and I do believe that was it.
Was there a reason why that was being scheduled before we actually received the budget or the executive summary from the school to understand the priorities from the district?
And I think we just asked for whatever was available. I think we kind of talked last week, both of, would it be better to do it ahead of time? Would it be better to at least get the summary? So I think it was just whatever worked best for everybody.
I'm also hoping he has a summary out beforehand. I mentioned to him the other day that it'd be nice for the budget committee to have that, so when they're viewing it,
Right.
have a better idea of like what the needs are and wants.
And I think he felt pretty confident that he could have it to us by the 18th,
Great.
provided that I remember to forward it to you all.
I can remind you.
Yes. So that is all I have for correspondence.
Are they gonna print that out like they did last year? We had it in a book, in a binder?
We all did last week ask for a binder copy and then one Excel copy so that Andrew can keep track of any changes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on then, town business, budget review. We'll turn it over to Mr. Byron.
Thank you, ma'am. First budget I'd like to review is 4550.2, which would be library.
The summary from our end, and then I'll hand it over if people have details. The proposed budget for the library next year, $203,689. And if you follow actually our year-to-date our appropriation to the library this year is 205,180. So this actually, from the library's end, represents a decrease over where we were this year. You'll note on my sheet for the default revised that when we approved the revised number in March, we were a little too aggressive in reducing the health insurance premiums that we had been anticipating. So that's why it looks like an increase in my world, but is a decrease in reality. So with that, I guess if there are specific questions about the library appropriation, we have representatives of the library here to speak to it.
I'm Vicki Barrick, the library director, and this is Lynn Clifford, the chair of the board.
Welcome.
I gave you a little overview sheet of all the different services and resources that we do offer to the community, as well as a little summary of what's happening with this 2015 proposed budget, as far as what items we saved money on and what went up a little bit. But would you like me to run through that with you, or would you like me to just take questions?
Sure, why don't you run through it? And just, I know there was a couple of questions about where to find this on our budget, and what you had to do, if you go to the library budget, which looks like it's just one line, underneath that line it says 960 library appropriations. That's actually a live link, and when you click that link, you'll go to the whole rest of the explanation of the budget. So if anybody couldn't find it, that's how to get to it. So.
Okay. We'll just run through the resources that we offer to the community quickly. Not everybody's aware. In-house, we obviously have books, audiobooks, DVDs, magazines, and newspapers. We have public computers, which get used quite a bit when people are having trouble with their computers at home and their internet's down and they can't make something print. We offer public Wi-Fi, which works inside the building, in the parking lot, out on the lawn area. We also have photocopier and fax services. Online, we offer the New Hampshire Downloadable Books program, which now has over 7,200 audiobooks and 8,300 ebooks. Those are all free to download with your library card. We also participate in the New Link databases, which gives people access to thousands of resources, magazines, journals, newspapers, and other primary source documents. So that's great for homework, research. It's also good if you just want to read People magazine. It's their PDF free, it comes right up for you. We have Encyclopedia Britannica as well, no longer doing the hard copies. And with our new integrated library system, patrons can now log into their account to see when their items are due. They can renew things online, they can reserve things online, rate what they've read, tag things, and most helpful, they receive emails that let them know when they have things due. So they have a little better chance of getting things in on time. We have our interlibrary loan program, which means if we don't have a title or a subject or something the community's looking for, we can get it from another library in the state, and it gets delivered right to our library where they can pick it up. We have quite a few programs and educational opportunities. Right now the library has 5 different book discussion groups. We have one for kids in 3rd through 5th grade, one for tweens in 6th to 8th grade, one for high school students, and 2 for adults. We offer 3 summer reading clubs, again, one for children, one for teens and tweens, and one for adults. And those are packed with lots of activities aside from being encouraged to read. And the activities can be things on health, art, music, physical activities, all kinds of things. We have 2 knitting groups, a morning and an evening group rather. We now have 4 story times that cover babies all the way through kindergarten, and monthly educational programs for teens and adults, as well as just a variety of other one-time kind of things that pop up here and there, like the Polar Express event or stuffed animal sleepover or any number of things.
Vicki, just a quick question.
Sure.
Do you have a lot of volunteers helping you with these programs?
We have some volunteers that actually will present the programs, but not a lot of volunteers that help with them, just a couple here and there. But we do get sophomores that need to get their hours in for their sophomore project, and they will volunteer with us. So in the summer, we usually have a couple of those, and right now we have 2 girls working with us on different little things. Resource usage, the community's return on investment for 2013 was 189%. So of the budget spent of $197,899, the services received in the community were $772,, and that's just based on a calculator that the state library puts out that puts a value on each, the books that are read, the programs attended, the computer usage, if you had to go to FedEx, I guess it is now, and use a computer, that type of thing. So our latest statistics for materials used is for 2013 for a full year, and that was up 4%, and users were up 3%.
How do you define users?
Users are people who come into the library, people who utilize our online resources. That would be it, wouldn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. So if we look onto the operating budget overview for the 2015 proposed budget, we are almost $1,500 under this year. And that came about from the elimination of a small bit of health and dental insurance, some savings that we were able to take advantage of through using our new integrated library system. And we started using TechSoup. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but TechSoup is a nonprofit group that sells, they don't really sell it, the vendors sell it, software to nonprofits, and libraries are included. So for instance, our antivirus security stuff for the computers, we're getting Semantic Endpoint Security, which is an online product, at $3 a computer. So it's a tremendous savings. We can get Microsoft Office Standard for $24 a computer. So it's really great. So we were able to reduce that line item quite a bit by using that company. And we don't have any predicted equipment needs for this coming year, so that took a nice chunk out as well. The savings were offset by a few slight increases. We just have the normal step increases for staff. There's no increases in hours or personnel. In library materials and licenses, we would like to offer the community the Mango Languages Online. And what that is a self-paced service that will teach you up to 63 different languages, and there's also 18 language-specific ESL courses. And they can do that at home, they can do it in the library, they can do it on their smartphone, their tablet, any number of those things. And the good thing about the Mango Languages is we do get quite a few people that come in and request language CDs, or used to be cassettes, but you can only check that out for 3 weeks. And most of the time we have to get them from another library because we don't carry Finnish or Russian, or we only have so much that we can handle, and you really can't learn a language in 3 weeks, and then they have to send it back or bring it back to us, and somebody else is taking it out. So this allows people to get into whatever they want to get into, and it's not a one item, one user situation. 100 people can be accessing Spanish at the same time, and that's no issue. So something like this can benefit job seekers, certainly homeschoolers, the people that do need to learn English as a second language, and travelers. I'm going to Iceland in a couple weeks, and if we had this, maybe I'd be learning Icelandic right now. Another increase came through New Hampshire downloadable books. the consortium voted to increase the spending by 20% in order to keep up with the increased usage and the excessive holds. In our community alone, our downloads went up 33% last year. So it is something that just continues to grow, and it's used quite well.
Do you find people are downloading more often now than actually physically coming in and checking out a book?
They're downloading more, but it's still not reaching the same levels.
Yeah, because,
as
well,
print.
I was just curious, because you said your usage was up, I think, 3 or 4%, but this is up by 33%, so I was just curious if you're seeing an offset.
There's not too much of an offset yet, especially among nonfiction. People don't want to read nonfiction on their devices
Yeah.
for whatever reason. I guess, you can't quickly
Flip
use your
back.
index or flip back and forth and that sort of thing. It is catching up with fiction, but the thing with that is, instead of 15 people checking out this new book, there's 12. So it's not a situation yet where it's overtaking or, we think we can stop buying that book, but 12 people still want to read it that way. The download is also a dicey kind of thing. In the library community, we don't quite know where everything's going to go, and I think Jason had shared last year with you an article that explained all the pitfalls of libraries and the downloads and how the publishers don't want to really work with us. And at the time, there were only, I think, 2 of the major publishers that would even sell to libraries. And you can download a book from Amazon for $12. We pay $85 for it. Yeah. So now this year, other publishers have come on board, but they've all come on board with big stipulations. One, the book can only be checked out 26 times before you have to repurchase it. Another is you can have it for 1 year and you have to repurchase it. Another is something like 48 weeks and you have to repurchase it. They're all doing different things. So basically what it's going to force this consortium into is only having the most popular things because they can't afford to relicense everything they've already purchased. So in the beginning, the model was, we start with an author who has a very popular series, and as we move along, we keep picking up their back titles till we have the full series. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. So, they just really have a phobia about working with us. They don't have a problem giving us discount on print and CD, but when it comes to audio, downloadable audio and ebook, there's a big issue. So,
Interesting.
other increases come in the area of programming. Our adult programs, I'm happy to say, we have a 13% increase in average attendance this year over last year. We've had 14 programs. They included things like cooking with chocolate. We've had a jazz concert, a folk concert. A gentleman came and spoke about New Hampshire cemeteries and gravestones and their histories and how you can learn history by visiting a cemetery and looking at the stones as well as the people who actually, what do we call that? Chiseled them. There we go. Back then it was. So all kinds of things. We tried, to offer a variety of topics, things that will appeal to different people. Aside from our appropriation that was in the budget for the year, we did apply for and received $985 in grants and partnerships. That's with the New Hampshire Humanities Council and also the Litchfield Women's Club and the Litchfield Historical Society. So we do try to maximize the funds that we get by bringing others in to work with us. The teen and tween programming is growing. I came here a couple years ago looking for a teen librarian, and there just wasn't, the funds for that at the time. We did get one of our librarians, a younger lady, working with the teens. She took over one of the book clubs, and as the 8th graders were graduating out of that book club this year, they were already worrying about it in March. What's going to happen next year? We want a book group. So we started another one so that we have one for the high school. And they started a Dungeons and Dragons group over the summer, which I was a little skeptical about. You know, that's kind of from back in the day, right? But apparently not so. We've had all kinds of people coming in for that. It's very amazing. We have averaged 9 people a week, which is good. And in the summer, they were playing from 4 to 8 o'clock outside every Tuesday night. And right now they're playing, since they're school, 6 to 8 on Tuesday nights at the library. So we do have a volunteer that runs that program. So it's been very, very well received. Summer reading participation among the teens was also up 70%. That brought it up to 56. That doesn't sound like a huge number, but those of you who have teenagers, I think, can appreciate that. Once they're at that age, you know, it's just really not that cool to keep going to the library anymore. But do seem to be getting them in, so that's great. And we've been averaging about 13 people per event in the summer as well. So whether it's crafts or they had a cupcake war, not throwing them at each other, but decorating like on the Food Channel, and movies and a number of things. So it's really great to see that age group being more participatory in the library. And then, of course, it's our year to have our septic tank cleaned, so that rounds out our increases.
All right, are there any questions?
You said you don't have any equipment purchases, so that line dropped down significantly. What equipment typically is in that line?
It would be computer equipment, you know, if we need to replace printers, monitors,
Septic tank doesn't, not the one that Jason goes.
basically mostly office type things.
And the software, I think you answered the question, the software purchases and licenses also went down. Is it because you switched to a different?
It's because, yeah, we started using TechSoup, and because our cost for the library integrated system is less than the old one.
Which means that TalkSoup will carry over, and that's the new supplier.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
Vicki, on your budget,
Yes.
the year-to-date is to what point in time?
It is right through today, really, yes.
Okay.
The last time I did bills was Tuesday, so,
I'll go down to your heating oil.
yes. Heating oil, we haven't gotten a delivery yet this fall because we switched companies.
Yeah.
It's not, really not my thing. We're part of the school district's contract,
Okay.
and they decided to go with Dead River, and I just checked with Kevin Lynch yesterday on that. He kind of goes back and forth with me, and apparently the contract hadn't been signed yet or something, so he was trying to get that taken
We
care
have no
of.
idea what the cost is gonna be, cost per,
Not being, I don't know.
okay? And we spent $1,400 so far through 10 months, and we expect to double that by the end of the year?
I'm just going on what we normally do. The tank is getting dangerously low right now. I'm hoping we
How
don't
big
end
is the
up.
tank?
Pardon me?
How big is the
There's
tank?
2 tanks, and I really don't know what the gallons are. 'Cause we have 2 systems, so there's 2 separate tanks.
You arrived at your budget number by,
By looking at the last 5 years of usage by gallon, and then
which was
averaging that.
898 gallons
Yes,
across a full year.
yes.
So, at the most, maybe another 400 gallons coming? The most? 2 months left to go? That number just looks high to me, Vicki. Yeah.
Okay.
Just based upon what you've spent so far.
And that could be, you know, it depends on how cold or how warm a winter is. That's why I try and average it over 5 years.
I'm just trying to figure out how big the tank could be. I mean, they're typically, what, 250 gallon, 300 gallon tanks?
Right.
So you said your average is 898 gallons a year? And then
Yes.
what did you use as a cost for the oil?
I used what I was told earlier in the year the Dead River contract price would be, which is, for 2015, is $3.14, basically.
Bill, answer your question, 3.047.
3.047.
What's that?
$3.05.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vicki, could you get back to us and tell me what the capacity is, the tank's capacity,
Sure.
please?
Yep.
Thank you. I mean, just looking at the number, that doesn't make sense to me.
All right, where did you want to go next?
I'd like to go to 4210.1, which is Police Department.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Start here with recognition that with the voters' approval of union contract, which stood alone as an article this current year in 14, we've needed to incorporate those costs into the budget. So that's where you'll see some of the leaps up from current year. In some cases, too, we have people with greater longevity. So we've moved, we now have, compared to last year, we now have one more officer who has reached the seniority level of corporal. We have the standard wage that had been approved in the contracts, which would cause one movement upward, and then you have the leap also to the new tier because of the corporal position. We are now fully staffed again, so this budget reflects that. When you look at the comparison to the revised default budget in March, we knew that we had an officer leaving, and so we knew that when we were adjusting the budget at that time, that we had a lag time that we would be waiting to fill that position. The union contract also has a education degree attainment incentive, and we need to be notified a year in advance. We can budget for that. These are the degree attainments anticipated, so we now budget for that. The shift differential, again, the contract increased that. That is for the overnight shift. We moved from 50 cents an hour to $1 an hour, so you'll see that increase in here. Reduced in line 125, the allocation for part-time officers. 140, you'll see the...
125, why'd you reduce it, John?
Why did I reduce it? I'm basically just looking at what our experience has been to date, and that we have 3 officers. We kept it at 75 last year, and we kept it at 75 through the default setting because, again, we knew we were short an officer. You know, that's the maneuvering there. And at the moment, we don't have a great prospect, you know. That's one of those things that, you know, we've talked about in the past. If the right person comes along that is the right fit, we have an interest in qualified part-time officers.
Mhm. So it's the same three we've had all along, and
Correct.
working about the same number of hours they have been
Correct.
working in the
Yeah.
past. Okay.
Yeah. 140 overtime. What you're seeing here is a bit of a shift, between the groups, because traditionally, we had tried to estimate between how much the sergeants do, the corporals, master patrol officers. So you'll see those numbers have reshuffled. And it also reflects the increase in wages overall. The captain's overtime, we budgeted at a ridiculously low number this
Question,
year.
why is it up this year then? Is there anything special going on?
No, it just, I'll be honest, the 7,000 was completely unrealistic. A couple incidents, you blow through that quickly. So that's really what's driving it. There's nothing unusual, it's just, I had a bad number.
Do you recall what we spent last year on that line?
I don't, I'm guessing,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if you have it, I'm figuring like probably,
Lieutenant's overtime.
yeah, the 141.
I'll look it up.
Okay. Court overtime, the good news there is that continues to decrease. Part of that, again, we continue to have the efficiencies of a prosecutor. So it's not, so when you see court overtime going down, that is not to assume that we are not running cases through the court. We're just using officer time in the court much more productively through prosecutor.
Yeah, it's down significantly this year,
Yeah.
but you only dropped $1,000.
Right now, yeah. I mean, that's,
I mean, you only spent $3,400 so far this year.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's, again, there's a bit of a gamble if you look at kind of what the history's been there.
Yeah.
It's a little high, it's a little low. If I get the wrong case, the right case.
Yeah, and we're looking at the captain saying
Yeah,
it's too low, so we can hire. This is,
right. And so, you win some, you lose some. And again, if it's the case that requires more sergeant time, it costs more than a case that takes more, patrol time.
Can you explain to us in, I guess, simpler terms?
Sure.
About how this is working now with, you said using more officers' time, which is what's lowering that? What's the actual?
More prosecutor.
More prosecutor time instead of the officer.
We have a contracted prosecutor. And so with that prosecutor handling cases and all of the, and most of the presence in the court, we don't have to send an officer over to the court all the time to wait for the case,
So
testify.
burglary, for example, instead of taking the officer's time, which a lot of it is just waiting in the
Right.
courtroom, right? We have a contract prosecutor that we're paying only for his time used, and he's waiting.
Well, he's waiting, or we're running it through, so when we have an officer over there, we're using the officer at the right time. The officer is not sitting around waiting for procedural.
Oh, I understand.
In other words, the prosecutor, if he's going through a case, he knows what's going to happen. He knows because he's worked with the judge, he's worked with the defense, I'll call it, attorney, exactly what's going to go on. So in some cases, there may be, for example, a plea bargain. And if there's a plea bargain, we don't need necessarily an officer there to be prepared to testify. The officer can stay back in Litchfield as an example.
Which means prior to doing it this way, we might not have known there was a plea bargain, and we would be.
Prior to doing it this way, we actually had an officer doing the
We could have,
prosecution.
right, and we could have 3 officers standing by waiting,
Okay.
getting 3 to 4 hours overtime at a minimum.
Just to find out, hey, there was a plea bargain,
Or
go
just,
back.
or you know what happens is, the officer working the case, or prosecuting the case, could work a deal out with the prosecutor, with the defense attorney at the 9th hour. Where now Lonnie is, his full-time job is talking with these guys, getting a feel for the case. If it's a strong case, talking to the defense attorney, and they understand, and coming up with a negotiated deal, or they're gonna, plea bargain at a different, that way it cuts down on a lot of our overtime.
Right. Now, to Bill's point, what could change, like, if you said something that could,
I'm sure.
what's like a scenario that could make it jump up high?
Couple scenarios are more officer-intensive cases that require more officer
Felony
time in the
cases.
court. things that require the presence of multiple officers.
A murder.
Okay, so in other words, intensity of a crime, so it's not like simply
Well, that's one thing.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
frequency of things going to court, some cases, more pleas mean less officer time, depending on the nature of the crime. And some of it's just logistic that we see with all of the rest. You see it with overtime, you see it with the others, If the sergeant gets the short end of the stick on a given case, sergeant overtime's more expensive than patrol officer overtime. So, it goes back to, we had the conversation a week ago 2 weeks ago, how many fire calls are you gonna have? It's the same sort of estimate problem, so.
And if I can interject, I think the prosecutor is more skilled at his job than the police officer was with the 2-week training. So an attorney, a defense attorney, looks at the case that our prosecutor is ready to present, and they're more likely to do a plea bargain because they feel like we've got a solid case. When there was a police prosecutor, a lot of times the attorneys would take it to trial because they feel like we can win this. But I think our prosecutor now is able to present that we've got a good case, and we see a lot of plea bargains, and that's why we're not having to call the officers there.
Okay, thank you.
Question from my side, right? When I look at overtime, just kind of in general as a bucket, right? It's $140 approximate $1,000 this year. It's about $21,000 increase year over year. What's significantly changed to support a $21,000 increase just in overtime?
You have, I'm sorry, you have, there's more vacation time, and,
That's not overtime.
Coverage.
yes, you have to
Coverage
cover
is.
it.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
coverage of
Coverage.
overtime. Got it.
And we're bringing back, if I can get into the 149, the training line,
Yep.
that will explain something we took out that we're bringing back. That's a sizable chunk of what's new.
Yep.
And I hate saying it's new because we all agreed last year, Selectmen Budget Committee, that it was the right thing to do, and that was what you see as the professional training progression. So going beyond sort of our basic level training, we had identified additional crime processing, fingerprint, crash investigation, domestic violence training, report writing. The program that the chief and captain have outlined, it was about a $30,000 program altogether, and that balance there is about $12,000 of fees and travel, $18,836 in shift coverage. We obviously didn't budget that amount. We budgeted $9,000. This year in the default budget, we set it aside. It was a new item, and we also knew we were going to be shorthanded in the department because I mentioned we had one officer who was leaving, we were going to have a vacancy, so we had those shifts to cover. Earlier this year as well, we had an officer out on medical leave for a little while, so just practically, we waited. It's still an important thing for us to do. That's where you see it coming back.
The problem I have, Jason, again, it's back to the bucket thing. Your budget was $28,000 this year for this line. You spent $14,000.
So far.
Yeah, 2 months ago.
Yeah, we spent $2,000. We're spending $2,000 probably tonight.
Yeah.
And not for
here,
these
I
two,
hope.
not for these two, mind you. No, they're doing nighttime shooting tonight.
It's still going a long way for another $14,000.
Yeah.
though. When I looked at all 4 overtime lines, and what you spent this year and what have you, the officers' overtime, what you propose looks pretty reasonable to me. What you propose to captain looks pretty reasonable to me. It looks like, to me, that you've overstated the court overtime by a little bit. And it looks like the overtime training is overstated just also on that same line, as a bucket. And it seems to me, there's got to be a finite number of hours of overtime that the officers can spend, because you get only so many hours in the day that you can use. And my reaction to what's proposed here is that it's more than you can actually handle. That's my observation. Now, the other folks can have their own, but that's my observation.
Yeah, and if we're fully, and I think this year is a hard year for us in some ways because we haven't been fully staffed. We've had people.
There are some keys left in the ladies' restrooms, and then now guidance for a
those yours?
forward vehicle and guidance.
Be right back.
Thank you.
And the trick for us is finding the discounting number, because what we have done in the past probably skewed a little high, because we'll take the mandatory training, the recommended, that first sort of detail line there, and if you look at my detail this year, you'll see we dropped the number. You know, it was like 18 and change, and now it's 16 and change. We dropped it, we took 20% out of that, because part of that, you know, we had based the old assumption, which I agree probably skewed high, on the notion of every hour for training was all overtime. Realistically, that's not the case, and the more strategic these guys are in making sure that we're doing training when we have people on or we're not hitting overtime. So I discounted that max exposure by 20%. Is that the right percentage? You know, but yeah, there is a point, your underlying point I agree with. We're just trying to find the right way to capture that.
Andrew, did you happen to find out what the lieutenant's overtime?
10,600.
Say again?
10,600.
So this looks in line then.
Yeah. The health insurance line, it basically just reflects changes in demographics. within
Sorry,
the
back
group.
to overtime,
Sure.
before we jump on. Is there any analysis that you've done to justify overtime versus hiring another officer to support? Well, I guess when I look at overtime and I look at $140,000, I'm thinking about what's the cost benefit between another hire and reducing some of the overtime potentially? I don't even know if that's a scenario that is likely.
My rule of thumb from experience is when I look at pure overtime, and that's, and in that, I'm calling strictly the wages line, the 140 line. It's not reasonable to put all the buckets together. I can't hire one officer and have that one officer do everyone's training. So that 140 line is the line I look at. My rule of thumb there is when you start approaching 1.5 to 2 times the full cost of an officer, then it's time to start looking, am I better off getting an officer? This number is still way lower than that, bringing, you know, even at that 85,000, because, you know, one officer's hours are not portable and exchangeable, you know, one for every shift that has to be covered, every shift that's extended. So the thought would be, I can't sit here and peddle, a new officer's gonna save you money. That 85 could probably be 65. And then you'll spend another 80 all in or to hire a new officer. So that's the logic I look at there.
I guess I'm trying to digest your statement, right, where you said 1 to 1.5 times, right?
Well, it should be 1.5 to 2 times.
1.5 to 2
1.5 to 2 times, sorry.
So if an officer generally makes $50,000 ballpark, right, aren't we at 1.5 times now with an $85,000 line item?
50, okay, but you've not counted the training overtime, you've not counted health insurance, so 50
That's
is
what I'm
not,
asking.
yeah, 50, yeah, so I use kind of 70, 80 as my, what's an officer cost me number. So,
And if I may just add, it's actually in my business, I run into, kind of much smaller scale, and I run 3 shifts, but when you're running 3 shifts, to Jason's point, it might not, you might have one guy off on a day shift and the same day a night shift. 16 hours in a day. A new police officer can't cover both. So it doesn't always work out perfect. And it might be a whole week off and then a whole week that you don't need somebody. And then when you add a new officer, you have all the other benefits that go with it. And then plus now vacation time accruing, which now you have to find more, or not just an officer, any employee, you'd have to find now coverage for that. So that's why you want the 2-time difference. And again, it just doesn't, in my opinion, apply to police. It applies to just any business, any employee when you go. As much as overtime is a lot of money and sometimes hurts, it is cheaper than going a new employee.
The other thing you gotta think about is if you hire, you're looking at the total cumulative overtime of officers that are spread across, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The problem is if you hire one officer, how can you assign that officer to replace some of this time? And it becomes really a stretch at that point as to whether that can effectively drop the overtime or only a portion of it, if you understand what I'm meaning. I don't disagree with the comments. At a certain point, it makes sense to
Right.
consider that, but I'm not sure right now where that point is.
Yeah, I guess, from my perspective, I'm asking the questions, because $140,000 in a bucket, right, it's a lot of money. It's 3% of your line, right? Or it's 3% of the overall budget, excuse me, and 10% of your line, so.
So it's a good question, and I think that it was good that we all heard the various explanations.
What can drop the line is part-time offices, but the problem with part-time offices is, number one, finding them, number two, finding them when they're available to work, for example, during the day shifts, because most of the part-time offices you find are already employed doing all types of fun stuff. And that becomes the difficulty and the hang-up with trying to use part-time offices to replace them.
And that's true, an extremely flexible part-time officer that's willing to work various shifts and maybe have a week off or work 6 days in 1 week to make up is the best.
Yeah.
But you're right, they're hard to find.
I continue on. Line 349 is a move in and out. This Child Advocacy Center used to be that was the lone item we've been putting in the health agency's operating budget the past couple of years after pushing all the other agencies out to a warrant article. The primary agency, the primary department that works with them is police department. So we just simply pick that up out of the health agency's budget and put it into the police budget. So I no longer have to carry a health agency budget divisions for one $1,900 expense.
Do they send us a request or an invoice?
They send us a request, and you're in paper form. But if you click on the actual, if you touch where,
Right there.
if you touch the name, you will see their whole written request.
Okay, so based upon what they have done for us in the previous year, they're requesting money for the next year, is that how it works?
Yes, they're looking at what the pattern is, and they provide some of the data. They've actually asked for $2,500. So this budget shows a $1,900.
How did you pick the 1,900 over?
$1,900 is what we have been paying for the past several years. So the decision was to keep that part flat.
This is not a fee, it's a donation.
Yes, it's a donation.
So it
But
can
the
be any number.
Yeah. The police department uses them in particular for child cases that involve sexual issues and stuff like that.
Are there other agencies out there they use too? Police department?
Not for that.
No?
No, the CAC Center, they have specialized interviewers that will handle small children up to teens. And they have special schooling, special skills to do that. And these cases often go to the Superior Court for a felony trial. So we use those caseworkers because the way they present their interview and the way they ask their questions, they'll hold up in court.
And all of Hillsborough County uses the CAC. All of
I
the
wasn't
towns.
questioning these folks, I was saying, are there other agencies that you've also used?
Sorry.
Belong in your budget? That was my question.
Oh.
Okay.
None that we have externally. That's the only one that is in our budget someplace else that they use.
So there are no other ones they use?
Not,
Transcripts, would that fall under this?
it'd be,
But it's
that's
hit
a
or miss.
one-off. I mean, the other things that, they either have a membership, so, you'll see, our membership in the Special Operations Unit is in here. Some of those things are in here, but other agencies like the CAC, that is a regular ongoing thing,
I was on a jury when she.
probably, I don't think there is.
I can't think of any,
Everything else is just a one-off.
yeah.
She's tough.
And when you click the link, which I didn't know was there either before
sorry.
tonight, it's a very detailed explanation is in the letter that's attached.
Yeah. They're a phenomenal group, phenomenal group.
And unlike most of the other NGOs, they have a board of directors that isn't made up of the same people that are, so the board has a different, it's not the fox watching the hen house type of deal. They have actually a pretty good board of directors. It's the first place I go.
355 anticipates we're gonna hire somebody?
No, 355 does not. If you look at the detail, our contract allows for random drug screening,
Okay,
so that's all that anticipates.
okay.
You cut that out last year, so I didn't put it back in. The next area, there's a little bit of logic here on, as we talked about in the fire department, 662 tire purchases, we rolled into vehicle repairs instead of treating tires separately. Vehicle repairs, even with that included, we've also decreased. There is an assumption being made in the vehicle repairs line that when you scroll down to the 760 cruiser purchase line, that we're replacing cruisers. If we get back to the point where we have cruisers that are under warranty, our costs go way down. If you look at the history of our vehicle repair line from 2010 to 2010, 11, 12,
When they were under warranty.
when they were under warranty, the numbers were low. If you look at 13, 14, that's when the numbers started going up. So there's an assumption being made here in those lines that we'll be back in vehicles under warranty. Since I opened the door, I'm happy to go back in a moment to some of those other lines that moved up if there are questions, but let's talk, okay, cruisers, this is what we are proposing here. We are talking about the last payment on the 2 vehicles we purchased in 2013. We are talking about a new vehicle outright purchase, and we are talking about replacing a cruiser, again, with general fund and using money from the detail fund. And part of the reason we're doing that is we have now created a roll-down problem because we've deferred cruiser purchases. In the normal pattern we used to have, vehicles would come out of frontline service and they would move on, and we get a couple years out of service of them as detail vehicles. Because we drove several of our frontline vehicles to the point of no return, they can't serve as detail vehicles. So one of the strategies we had here is, of the new vehicles we have, one of those vehicles is already exceeding the mileage that we would expect to have because it's been a reliable vehicle. You can recall that in the past, the expectation is 30,000 miles per year on each vehicle. So what we figured here is if we are able to swap out that so-called new vehicle with the most miles on it, and move it into a secondary or detail use, we can use the detail funds to pay for it. Basically, we'll be selling it from ourselves to the detail fund, so part of the idea there is that's not property tax money we need, that's money we have in hand. Got to find some way to get a detail vehicle.
Just so the committee's also aware, right? And you mentioned this, I believe, at an earlier committee meeting, there's also another cruiser that's on purchase or that's on order now?
It just came in, right?
Or it
Yep.
just came in?
Yeah, it just came in within the past week or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if all of this goes to the voter and passes, the new vehicles that you'd be buying would be 2015 models, right?
Right.
Do you know offhand the years of each one? We'll have 2 of 2013, right?
You'll have 2 2013s, 1 2014, 2 2015s of the Interceptor type that we are, well, not Interceptor,
The
whatever they're called now, the crossover.
crossover.
So the 2 2013s, the 2014, and the 2 2015s, if approved, will all be the new style.
Right.
Okay. And the cruiser purchased 40,000 and the other one, which is 40 also, is that just the vehicle, or do we need new interior and everything for it? And does that include it all?
That is, the 40 is all in. That's about 20, in round numbers, 25 for a vehicle, 15 for setup.
Which means at that point, all our vehicles, frontline vehicles, will be the new style.
Exactly.
Which means any replacements moving forward would not be needing, assuming the models don't change, would not be needing
Assuming the
the
models
cages.
don't change.
Right. You know, what we figured is that fit-ups, the fit-up items, we should be able to last 2 cycles, assuming a traditional cycle of 3 years for frontline. We should be able to get those through 2 cycles. So 6 years. You know, you may have $1,000 or two of some things will deteriorate, but the majority of it will be portable.
Because when they move off a front line, that stuff comes out to go in the new vehicle, because the secondary vehicle
Correct.
doesn't need that stuff.
Correct.
Well, not everything, but.
Not everything, I mean, some of the lights would stay, you know, some of the hidden lights would stay or whatever.
Okay, but the
For
expense
detail.
of the cage and.
Right,
that
would come
stuff.
out and swap into the new vehicle.
Well, if you're going to replace one of the existing ones with a new one next year, then some of that cost you don't have to incur, is that correct?
No, it's replacing a
Crown Vic.
Crown Vic, so all of it has to get replaced.
I thought that you said that you were going to replace one of the existing ones, and that's why you were being able to use that money.
Right, but there's much less that can be taken off of that, because we're still talking about the light
That was-
package.
I thought that was the
Right.
question, Chris.
But we're talking about the light package, the computer package, you know, on that. If you turn 3 into a detail vehicle,
Right,
you were gonna have some things that you're not, but I'm also not gonna have a new vehicle to put them in.
right.
So I may be able to take some stuff out.
Oh, you're buying a new vehicle.
But yes, the new vehicle would need to come online before we swap a vehicle down to detail.
I think what Bill's asking, if I can summarize, and Bill, if I'm wrong, correct me. I'm sure you will. What Bill's asking is if we're gonna take 3, which is a 2013 vehicle, and then transfer that to details, okay? And some of the equipment that's in 3, which is now the quote, new model vehicle, go to replace equipment that we would normally have to purchase for the new vehicle.
Exactly.
We're still short a car. I think that's where it's missing, because we only have the 3 frontline cars. So when we get the new car, that will be our 4th frontline car.
Right, but I think Bill's question is, you're not gonna have the same level of equipment in 3 when it goes to detail as you would have in I'll call it a frontline car, right?
Correct.
So the equipment that you now have in 3, can some of that be pulled out
Yes.
and
We'll
used
take,
in 4? And then Bill's next question, which he hasn't asked yet, does that drop the price of
That's the
6,
question.
7, or 8, whatever the car
You're right,
number
yeah.
is?
And that would be my observation. If
Well,
that's the way you've normally tried to do it.
Do you understand what I'm?
yeah.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. We'll pull
Can
a
we-
list of numbers, we'll get it back, we'll get back to you on it.
can we-
You're looking for $80,000 for 2 cruisers, and it sounds
Right.
like it's something less than that
Right.
that you're looking for.
Can we, we'll get back to the
Yeah.
committee next week,
Yeah.
how's that sound? So we can kind of work it through.
Yeah.
And I have a question. What exactly do you use the detail cars for? They're not on patrol, so they can't be accumulating very much in the way of mileage.
No, that's why they.
It's all hours.
Yeah,
It's all hours on the engine.
Are the cars equipped with hour meters?
Yes. Yep.
Really? That would be interesting. I'd love to see the hours versus mileage on the cars.
It also
Just out of curiosity. it'd
Also
be-
depends on how fast you drive.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? We have a speed limit, 40.
Just that I throw that out.
Okay. We can back into that.
Anything else on that? Or-
If we follow, the only thing I will say is if we follow this plan, this would get us back into what we had used before, which is the 1-2-1-2 strategy. 2014, we'll have the 1 car that we're getting. 2015, we'd have the 2, and then 16, we should be back to the 1 again and cycle that through.
And the 16 would be roundabouts 25, 28,000 instead of the 40.
It should be much cheaper, yes. There's going to be the cost of the vehicle, and there will also be the installation cost of the equipment to mount it in the vehicle. But, excuse me, the purchase of the equipment that would be mounted in the vehicle shouldn't be there,
Okay.
unless, to your point, the model
Change the
changes.
model.
Then the model changes, all bets are off.
What's the most amount of cruisers that are out during a certain shift? 3, 4?
There's generally 2, then we have overrun shifts. So you may have 3 cruisers out, but it could be for like 2 hours that you would have the 3. Then it would revert to the 2. Just the way the shifts operate, and having a supervisor on duty.
Yep. But the supervisors, they have cars?
The supervisor, the 2 supervisors work 10-hour days.
We-
So
we've done
the
that.
downtime for them is only 4 hours that car could be used
Okay.
by anybody else. And we do the 8-hour shifts for most of the other guys. So instead of coming in for 4 hours with one car and then moving to another car for 4 hours, and it gives you that 8-hour break. So the cars all run about 16 hours a day. So it would give us that 8-hour break in between.
Mhm.
What's the board's plan for the chief's car and the captain's car? Is that correct?
I mean, we've talked about rolling those in and whether moving some of these vehicles down that, you know, there's actually, in some cases, there's, if we had enough vehicles coming through, could we divert something instead of going to detail to be to cover an admin need? Alternatively, we may be looking at buying admin. I mean, we're still struggling to deal with the knock-on effect of not dealing cruisers, sort of, getting from one schedule to a different schedule left us kind of hanging on that. And I think that's actually why, your question on the conversion from cruiser to detail, what the chief and I originally presented to the selectmen was a different approach for detail vehicles, so I think we took their number and I didn't go back and check it again, because that's the other issue we have. So the answer is, I don't know exactly what we're gonna do with that, but it is fair to know we have 2 admin vehicles that are in circulation as well, separate from frontline, separate from detail, and they are aging and have some issues too. The good news is they don't cost nearly what these others cost. And the approach, and we've talked.
And the lifetime is substantially more.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, that's, the good news is when you get it, it will last you longer. So,
the board hasn't made a decision,
Yeah.
Andrew, yet on how we want to deal with the chief's car, or how we get cars down through for like detectives and stuff to move around, and we haven't gone through that yet. What we were trying to do honestly is get the frontline vehicles nailed down, and I think that this will do it and get us on a path. If we continue this on a regular basis, it'll keep us on a path where it'll eventually work itself out, as Jason said, with potential cars that can be used administratively in the force. But we haven't discussed how we want to deal with that. We also, I know the selectmen are cognizant of the fact that, we've got a lot of expense here, and adding an additional car in there and everything else is, it's not the right time.
Yeah. I asked the question because you're right, this would help get back to the 2-1-2 or 1-2-1
Right.
cycle, right, however you want to say it. Until you have one of their cars up, and then you're not in that, you break that cycle, right? And my fear is that we'll see this probably next year.
Well, my thinking would be that if, come next budget season, if you want to call it that, we may have to do something where we consider another car. And that isn't going to be as expensive as a cruiser, because we're not going to fit it out with the same type of stuff as a cruiser. We're going to have the wigwags in there, stuff like that, but we may have to do something, and rather than do it in a year of 2 cruises, it may make better sense to do it in a year of 1. But in all honesty, the board hasn't discussed it yet, but that would be my thinking as a board member.
Thank you.
Go back, if you're okay with that, I can hit a couple other earlier lines that I skipped over.
I just want to clarify one thing. Everybody understood that we're going to be taking money out of the detail fund to apply towards one of these vehicles? Just to,
Understood that, but it's unusual for us. We usually pay for that out of the budget without dipping into.
The detail fund should be a wash fund, is really what it should be. Unfortunately, I think the administrative costs have accumulated in there and stuff, and it probably makes sense that we use that.
Yeah, and that is not a sustainable answer forever and ever. And, you know, Frank's point gets to the point, you know, the late 2000s, it appears that the town wasn't reimbursing itself for some of its admin charges, so there's a balance there. So I'm trying to gradually spend that balance down for detail-related items, which is sort of the guidance the auditors had.
And-
So,
And by one member of the board who shall remain nameless, I've just asked a question as to whether a used car could fill some of these needs. So partly in answer to Andrew's thing, next year, a used car may be able to, or a one-year older model type thing, could potentially fill a need at the chief's level, if you understand what I'm saying. So.
All right, do we want to back up then?
I'll back up briefly to the uniforms and accessories. The jump there is related to the contract, the uniform allowance that officers receive there. And your year-to-date gross over expenditure is related to the cost of having to kit out a new officer. So, you know, that's you know, a new officer is about $3,000 to get a new officer set up. So that's what, if you look at the year-to-date and wonder why it's $7,200 against a $3,400 line.
One of the questions I had for you a few weeks ago, and it might be helpful for other committee members looking at this, is the difference between line 191 and line 680.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, there are two lines that have the uniforms in their name. The 680 line is actual uniforms, equipment, gear, and that, and the like. The item that's up in the 100s, the 191, the uniform allowance, is what we pay for cleaning of the uniform. So that's purely the cleaning stipend, which is a taxable benefit that is paid. And then the 680 ends up being the actual items. And it's a little trickier too, because, you know, I have to watch my references, because we also, that's a uniform allowance, and the way our contract is written now. The way the contract is set up, each officer gets a bucket of whatever that number is, $500. And they have the ability with the
Within
the
policy.
approval, yeah, within policy or approval of the chief to update and replace uniform items. Equipment purchase, we still have the taser replacement issue that we talked about last year. Ultimately, we did not purchase any tasers this year. That was one of the things that went on to the back burner, which means we still have about a $15,000 expense to replace 15 tasers. This budget anticipates a half and half approach still. Preference is all of them. But this is, given everything else we had going, we said, okay, we'll look at a half and half here.
And the chief told me earlier before the meeting that he's willing to demonstrate. I
I saw that coming.
I was the first one.
Sure.
My heart would stop.
I think the person with the people with the most amount of experience should nominate the people with less experience in government for that demonstration.
Just a question on tasers. Why is 15 the right number?
The amount, oh, I'm sorry,
The number of tasers.
it's one for each officer.
Okay.
You have the part-time officer, and then a spare in the event one goes down. There may be two spares.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, we have,
ACO carries one, too.
ACO carries one, I'm sorry, and you have, our SRO carries one also. So it gives you the one spare.
And for those of you who may not be up to speed on acronym SOUP, ACO is
Oh.
Animal Control Officer, SRO is School Resource Officer.
But at any given point in time, you may have 5 or 6 officers on shift, or 7 officers, so, yeah, why would you not rotate that through a shift? So,
But-
when, I get done I get done with my shift at the end of the day, I hand Chris my taser.
And gun.
The
Vest.
Well, we're talking about tasers, I didn't.
the taser, like the firearm, like the vest, is a core piece of officer-assigned equipment that's assigned to that officer. It doesn't go in a basket at the end of the shift. Part of that is the training, the maintenance, the liability, like you have with a firearm.
Okay.
So that's why it's not exchangeable.
And I hate to be the extra officer on duty without the taser, it has to go on call.
I don't think there's any reference to no officers not having tasers. I
No.
think we were looking for, is there an opportunity to
Economize.
put it on a charger and take, I don't know how this
No,
works. so-
no, it's not shareable like a radio. It is a weapon.
Yeah.
It is treated like a weapon. It is treated in the courts like a weapon. It is not treated like a utility item.
Then I don't want to be your demo.
There are cases where we have majority of the officers on the road at a particular time. For example, there was an incident that occurred down the street here where we had state police there, we had county, we had Litchfield, and there was everybody and his brother there because there was a concern about what was going on.
Public safety.
And when you do that, the point I'm making is those officers have to be properly equipped, and that includes the issuance of tasers. And
It was interesting, when we went on the tour, you talked about the escalation of use. So you start low and you build up, and you
Right.
said when you don't have access to a taser, your only next
Right.
is to go for a weapon.
Right. Like if we go to let's say it's a burglary in progress, or a domestic, or something that's really serious. Say we had a gentleman that was barricaded in his house. If we enter the house, or we go to a burglary scene, and 2 officers are there, one officer's going to go in with lethal force, with his firearm drawn. The second officer's going to come in with the taser. So if it ends up being somebody barricaded, and he's resisting arrest, and we're able to use a taser, that's the most preferable. But when we don't have the equipment, then both officers are going in with firearms, and that's the choice that we have.
We did have a real-life example a couple months ago where we had a suicidal subject. He had a knife, and we had one officer switch out to a taser. One officer had his firearm in the ready, and the other officer had the taser, and they were able to de-escalate that situation. And when he saw the dot on him, he gave up. And that was a good example of why a taser would be good in those instances.
Any questions on any of the lines that we haven't hit? All right. We want to move on to, what is it?
4210.5, which is police
services.
support.
The wage line and the uniform and accessories line reflect the contractual changes. The changes you see in dispatch coverage and overtime reflect restoring the levels that we had proposed in last year's original budget. One of the default adjustments we made this year is we stopped providing extra coverage when one of our dispatchers was out. We stopped providing coverage at overtime. If you go to Town Hall this evening, there is no dispatch coverage on site. It is over to county. It was a budget choice we made this year. It is not a sustainable policy choice.
Why?
It has saved us some money here, but created some operating inefficiencies. We're not providing the service to the public that they've expected, for one. Secondly, we're kind of pushing our luck with county, because the county is covering more shifts than are anticipated in our budget and contract. And probably the least efficient thing that's happening is we have people call off hours. And when they call to county dispatch, I want to talk to an officer. So we bring often somebody back in from the road to take that call. And sometimes that call ends up being, how late is the dump open?
Do you get the same calls anyways from county dispatch? When you don't have somebody covering? Same kind of calls?
When we don't have somebody covering?
Yeah.
No, that's what we would get when county's covering. When we have our own person there,
Right.
our own dispatcher is answering the call when it goes merrily on its way. And I don't have to call an officer in to explain. County is going to use less of a filter on those than our own internal
So
dispatchers
you
will.
still have to call an officer in, even with the county dispatch
Yeah.
that we're doing?
Yeah.
So if you called, like
You
if
just-
you
you just
called right
gotta
now
cut
and
down on that a little
say,
bit,
yeah,
what you
and say, I want to talk to a police officer.
Yeah.
They're going to say, okay, they're going to call a police officer in, and he could be at an accident scene, he could be doing whatever, 102. He drives all the way into the station, this could be a sergeant. Can I help you? Yeah, how late is the dump open?
Yeah.
What
And that's happening now when county normally does our dispatching. And it happens.
The overnight
Yeah.
shifts.
It
Yeah.
can
Well,
happen at-
Less
Yeah,
impact.
it'll happen a little
They're
bit,
not
but
3 to
it's
11.
happening now because we're usually, the shifts we're not covering,
Yeah, what are they?
when we don't cover shifts, we try to cover the morning into early afternoon, so
Yeah.
the 3 o'clock. So if we're not covering one of the shifts during the day, we'll stop dispatch coverage at 3 o'clock and shift to county at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's a busy time.
Yeah.
People are coming out of work, they want to be able to get a copy of an accident report or something like that.
So it's not an optimal choice. We tried it this year. It was a place that we thought, hey, we might be able to cut back and save.
Yeah.
In hindsight, we probably wouldn't do it
Yeah.
to this degree again.
How do you provide that coverage?
We provide it usually through a part-time officer, and we'll charge the part-time officer to dispatch coverage, not to part-time.
Okay. So that's part of his 30 hours.
If it's a
From
retiree,
From
yes,
a
it
state
is.
retirement system perspective, yes,
Yes,
that would be.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, now it is.
I can assure you of that one.
Yep.
So the coverage that we cover with our own employees, you said start at what time in the morning?
7.
7 a.m. and end at 3?
11 p.m.
11 p.m.
Yep. Monday through Friday.
And what
That's
about-
not one shift.
Right.
That-
And Monday, nothing on weekends?
Correct.
Okay, so you cut it back this year, savings to what time did you close?
No, we covered it whenever we could. The only time when we closed is if one of our 2 dispatchers was not available. So if they were on vacation or they, needed time off, we didn't close every day at 3.
Right.
We staffed 7 to 11. However, if somebody was on vacation, we'd make sure the 7 to 3 shift was covered, and we may not cover the 3 to 11 shift. Now, should also point out that part of the reason we decided to do this in March is we had a reserve of goodwill in March with county dispatch as well, because we were covering through a temporary duty some of the overnight hours that normally would go to county. So we had kind of built up a little bit of reservoir of extra hours. So I felt, and Chief felt that we could probably make that argument this year without county pushing back a higher fee. But that also is not something we would expect to have in the coming year.
Any other questions on police support? All right,
I suggest we go to 4414.1.
animal control.
This is a fairly flat budget. The adjustment from our default revised budget was building repair. We had some issues in the first quarter of the year dealing with heating system in that building, so I adjusted the default to accommodate that. But what you'll see is a very small change from what the original budget we had all proposed and approved last year.
The animal, does the officer, the ACO, have specific hours, or is it called when needed?
It's as needed.
Right.
So if there's a deer running loose, is that?
We usually let, we let the deer just run.
No, for example, I guess what I mean, I remember once a few years ago in front of St. Francis School, a deer was injured, bleeding.
That was me.
That was you.
That was me.
Right, because I remember that now.
Yeah, we won't let the animal suffer. We won't call the animal control officer, who he could probably get there, but it would take him 30 minutes. An officer will handle that situation.
Okay, so that would be a situation then, but in this specific case, it was critical because the deer was suffering.
Yes.
But that's a case where if there was an animal or an instance, the animal control officer is called, wherever he happens to be, he comes, handles the situation.
Especially if you have like a dog bite situation, he would come in, he would handle that, and he would handle that further, handling any court actions. And
Investigate it further.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So basically the hours are different every year, so you just come up with a number because he's paid by the hour?
No, he's paid a fixed stipend.
Right.
He's paid a
it's
fixed
stipend.
stipend to be available to us, yeah.
And he follows up on all of the registrations and handling any court actions there. People that don't have their dogs registered, he follows up on all of that stuff.
Okay.
In conjunction with the town clerk.
Does this also handle if there was just dead animals in the road, or is that a different?
No. Usually, highway department.
That's highway takes care of
he'll
that,
help
because they
us.
got the shovels. Yeah.
Used to have an incinerator, you know.
Okay.
At that point, they've already been controlled.
Right, yes. And that's, I'm trying to place the job with, so I understand. So this is dog bites, it's instances, it's, okay.
Yeah.
Snake bites.
Snake bites, which
Yeah.
probably don't happen in garden snakes, right? Nip at you.
Oh, we have the hognose snake here in Litchfield.
Yeah.
So.
We have sent officers to snakes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Not this officer.
Especially when they have to shoot it when it's in your house.
All righty then. Anything else for animal control? Okay. That looks like it covers what we need our officers for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Like that? Jason? No, I don't like your binder.
All right, so it looks as
Good
though
night.
if we head back to the top, good night, thank you. Town insurance, 4196.
Oh, sorry. Moved on to mosquito for some reason.
You seem fascinated with it.
Yeah. Town insurance, this reflects our liability insurance costs from Property Liability Trust. Again, you'll see, though, that this is one of those, like we had with Pennachuck previous week. I made an estimate, and the selectmen used that number. The actual is slightly higher, $61,505 is the invoice we receive for next year. And then insurance deductibles, we have a $1,000 deductible, so this is based on 2 incidents where we pay the full deductible.
Any questions? All right, now we can move to mosquito district.
Mosquito district. The lion's share of this budget is the contracted services. Slight increase in the contracted services budget. And a request to buy some bat boxes for installation in a few key spots. Bats being a natural way to control mosquitoes.
So in other words, we want bats.
Yes, yeah, you want bats and you want to like house bats in these, there's specific bat houses that are.
So the bat boxes aren't to control bats, it's to invite bats.
Yes, yeah, you want bats, you don't want mosquitoes.
So is there a way to partner, say, with the high school shop and build them? Because they're not hard to build.
Real tiny.
Yeah, it was
Not a bad idea.
it was suggested.
Software
So you're
projects
saying that they
seem-
should be in the school budget?
Sort of, but no, I was just thinking, even if
It
it's like
already is in the school budget,
a
the
sophomore
lumber.
project or a senior project to take this on, or even our local scouts if they're looking for a Eagle Scout project.
Yeah, I mean, it had been, that was a conversation that, I had had as well. I think that what the thought was is to at least get a couple of these as sort of the prototypes. And then you may be able to go.
Who would pick where to install them? Because we installed one on our property, and they still live in the shutters. So who would pick where these would go? Because you can't guarantee that they're bats are gonna like them as a.
First of all, now that I know that they control mosquitoes, I'm gonna buy some bat boxes.
But they don't necessarily go. Like I said, we have a bat house.
And then
they
what-
still live behind my shutters.
I just wanna know, what is the going rate for
Well,
one
you're
bat
lucky though,
box?
you got 'em.
Exactly.
If I remember correctly on this, that what they were looking at was about 150 per.
Wow,
Yeah, they're.
I would've never thought there would've been that much.
Really? They're
Yeah.
So
that
you only get
expensive?
two bat boxes?
That was.
What are they using?
I'll build them cheaper
Mahogany?
than that.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, we got a party.
He's researching bat boxes already.
Yeah.
He's going on Amazon. Look at that, bat boxes in Amazon.
21 bucks a piece.
There you go.
And, oh, by the way,
Plus
butterfly houses
installation.
don't work.
Yeah, the mosquito district had flagged a particular,
It's a bat
If it's in my
hotel.
neighborhood, then you just give them mine.
yeah, it really is kind of like a serious bat hotel kind of thing that they were looking at. This isn't sort of a small little, this is a sort of, this is hold a lot of,
Hotel.
Acme?
okay, hold on a second. Oh,
Look at the
yeah,
Economy Lodge over there.
You can't have a single one, you gotta have multi.
You want a family of bats.
okay, for those of you sitting, if those of you Googling this, you want to Google the bat can.
The bat can.
The indestructible industrial bat house.
Wall-to-wall
The baffles are estimated to last about 20 years.
Doesn't get used.
And each bat can is $149.
The bat can, there you
Is
go.
a bat can in the bat cave?
So, I mean, it is legitimately what it was. I mean, this is what the committee had flagged as their preferred, so.
All I know is
It looks
this,
to me that you could buy yourself a hunk of PVC pipe,
Yeah.
4-inch, Schedule 4 or something.
Yeah,
Put
yeah, that's
together
what
a
it looks
bunch
like.
put together a bunch of these things in about 15
That's
You
what it
minutes.
see
looks
like
like.
black spray paint, because they like the dark
all
inside.
all I know is this committee is too darn serious half the time. I'm glad we're talking about bat caves.
Egg cans.
Wow.
It does look like black PVC pipe.
Well, now you there is a discount. You can get it for $129.
You get two?
Wow.
Regarding
Oh, the
the
baffles inside the
contracted
back.
services,
Okay, there you go.
regarding
You got that in the
contracted
minutes,
services,
Michelle? Baffles in the bat cave.
how long is their contract? Is it yearly?
It's year to year, and this price is extremely competitive. There are only a handful of certified.
That was gonna be my
That's,
next.
yeah, there's
How
only.
many? Yeah.
There's only, I think there's like 3 or 4 that are doing business in the state for municipalities. And this company is lower than similar services.
So you have the option to
Yeah, I mean,
up their contract or?
yeah, in this case, I think it makes a lot of sense to continue. They're a good value, I know, I think like 2 years ago, I did a quick check with some of my colleagues that I knew were in the business or had similar sized towns, similar sized programs. And at the time, this was a cheaper option.
Does every town do the mosquito district control?
No, but a lot in our region do because of the heightened challenge we have in
There's-
Hillsborough, Rockingham County.
This was
two main-
voted in as a
There's two main
warrant.
diseases that are out there. Triple E, which is Eastern equine encephalitis, and
We tested
West
all
Nile
those.
virus.
Oh.
And we've had, I think, both of those. I don't know about Triple E.
We did, my kid was 4 months
But
old.
there is detections in the town. We do get detections and hits.
So
And
they do that also, they sample some of these, they must trap mosquitoes and sample.
They have
I've been to one
traps.
of the meetings and
Yeah.
I've asked questions.
They have traps that are set up around town in certain locations, and they monitor those locations. They get the mosquitoes, and then they check to see what the species of the mosquito is, as well as they check also if any of the mosquitoes test positive.
Offices are now open. Thank you for being here tonight. Please drive home safely. Have a great evening.
Are we adjourned?
I gotta go.
Yep.
No, I'm afraid you didn't, this is not a conference.
Take off in 5 minutes.
And the mosquito district was formed from a warrant, it was, a warrant article was passed, so something that the town definitely wanted.
It was actually as a result, and was put forward by a family in town whose father was affected by, I think it was.
Triple E.
Triple E.
Yep.
And it significantly affected him.
Yep.
The contract price, Jason, this is a set number regardless of how frequently you have to use them?
Yeah, because they have a fixed series of things that they do. This isn't just 30,000 to come in and spray late in the year. They do,
I
they,
understand that,
Yeah.
but my question really is, we will spend the 30,800 regardless of what they have to do?
we will, yes, yeah.
This year, we haven't spent so far,
We will spend it all this year.
you must have.
It's
some more
paid, I
bills
think,
coming.
Yeah.
I think it's paid quarterly, Bill.
Yeah, the bills come in through the season.
You're only down about $3,000.
Yeah, which is one more payment, which is one more bill that hasn't come through yet, so,
I'm good.
yep.
All right, if there's nothing more for mosquito district, the last one is health agencies, 4415.
Easiest one of all, there's nothing left.
Yep.
We took the one out. You'll see some information. The proposed budget does not contain anything. You will see agencies again when we discuss selectmen's articles in a few weeks.
I have a question, though, on court-appointed special advocates.
Were you referring to, Bill?
Yep.
The next
Down at the
to
bottom,
last
okay.
one on the line. 6 Litchfield students served in Merrimack Family Court, looking for $500. That's not police budget?
No, but that's not one that, that we're using. The Child Advocacy Center is the center that they use. You know, there are other children that are involved in other family and court issues that don't necessarily involve the police,
Okay.
so,
They're
but
not-
there's,
They're not involved in this one at all, then?
yeah.
Okay. And, okay. You think of a warrant article?
Well, what we've done in the past is, we've basically put a warrant article forward, and I think the amount of the warrant article was roughly $4,900, if I remember correctly. And we were expecting, as a Board of Selectmen, that the citizens' deliberative session would participate in saying, what is the right number? And we would provide information as to what are these institutions doing for the town, because some of them have quite a bit of work that they do in terms of helping older citizens, mental health issues, stuff like that, and that they would adjust accordingly based upon the individuals who attend deliberative sessions' desires. So what we're going to do is go forward with the warrant article this year, pretty much in the same type of vein. The board hasn't voted on it yet, so we'll see where it goes.
So, but why are we moving, these are primarily donations to agencies that serve our town. Why do we pick one and move it into the police budget? Wouldn't it be easier for the taxpayers and the residents of the town to see how much in total we donate by including it here?
The current construction of the warrant article, and again, I'm stating that it wasn't voted on by the board, would be to list the full amount requested by the agencies, and then we have the citizens of deliberative decide what do they want to fund this with.
So then would the 1,900 from the police budget be moved here? Or would
No.
So my question then is, why are we picking one?
We're not picking one, we would be listing them all.
No, I think, but what she's saying is,
The
why
one-
is
why is one
19,
the
why
police
is
budget?
1,900 in the
Right.
police budget? And I think that if you read the
the-
explanation, they have a very specialized way of interviewing children that are, stands up in court,
No,
so.
I understand that. It's still, though, it's a donation on behalf of us. It's not a bill. It's a request for funding.
Right.
That we're doing a charity donation to the organization, right?
Right.
So then why would we not lump all the charity donation into one area?
That's what we used to,
The taxpayers would be like,
You-
we are awesome, we gave them $10,000.
used to be part of the operating budget,
Yeah.
okay, and it came out of a separate warrant article last year for the first time.
Couple, about
2
3 or
years
4
ago.
years ago.
2 years ago.
Okay. Prior to that, it was in the budget, and the selectmen would
Right.
recommend a certain number, and that's what would go in, and it'd be fly through. We've
Just
had
for-
it
yeah.
2 years in a row with separate warrants and very little discussion at deliberative session, true.
Mhm.
Uh,
If that was $1,900, and this year, the,
Just for
No,
consistency,
14,000.
consistency wise, I would think that charity donations is all they lump together. Just so, otherwise it gets buried in the police operating budget and people won't know that they're giving money to an organization that's not actually.
Well, they'll know that they're giving to an organization if it's a separate warrant article.
Right, but it's not currently.
What she's,
Yeah, 'cause
what she's
it's in the
saying is
police
that the one
budget,
that's in the police budget is being handled separate than the ones here.
And we decided 2 years ago, when we moved everything else out to an article, that because this was more of a service that we use for our operation and less of just a charitable donation, that we retain that in the budget. All we did differently this year is move it from one section to the other. So unlike some of the others that were purely charity, that when, the others serve people in this community. The difference is, the Child Advocacy Center, the police department calls and says, I need your help for this case. And they're involved. And that was the argument we used for keeping it in the
It's really
operating
not a
budget.
donation.
It's really, yeah.
We're paying for service here, but we're deciding how much we're gonna pay for the service.
Yeah.
The bottom line, I don't think they'd turn you away, but
I'm
if you're
sure
going
they
to
will.
depend upon their services, you ought to do something.
Well, and it sounds like, from the description, it's a benefit to our police department to be able to prosecute better, win cases, and so it's, yeah, a service that, if we didn't have that, in order to get that same level of expertise, we would have to pay somebody.
No, I'm fine with that. It's just, for me, consistency wise, I would say that it's a request for funding that's not, we're not obligated to pay. We can pay it voluntarily as a donation, charity, donations accepted. If I were compiling the budget, I would put all those together. It's just,
Well-
that's how I would do it.
I guess.
But you guys get to do it however you want to do it.
I guess my comment to the budget committee would be, if the budget committee feels that this ought to be part of the budget, then they can modify the budget that we've submitted to you for 0. And you have listed on the right-hand side of that, all of the requests that came in. You can modify that to whatever you guys think. And if that happens, then the warrant article would be redundant, and you can go from there. It's up to, our decision was, let's put it and give the citizens a choice on whether they want to spend it or not. It's not a required expense for these items.
Yeah.
That's all.
can't even go to the dump without donating anymore.
And to that end, I mean, one of the things that we've seen is, and we've seen right along, and this is not any reflection on this one item or what they do, is that you see these non-government organizations and these advocacy groups and whatever, including some lobbying groups, they're slipping into our budget. And we're paying for that without a conscious choice.
We thought it was better to let the citizens make a conscious decision whether they wanted to fund those or not. And that was the reason it went to a warrant.
All right, if there's nothing else on health agencies, we need to move on to budget voting. The budgets we were presented with last week. 4152.1, reevaluation of property or assessing. If there's any changes, motions, I'll accept the motion. I hear nothing, so that will stay as it is for now. Moving on to Personnel Administration, 4155. Are there any motions to change anything in this account?
There was one here, I had a note the actual was different than what was presented.
Oh, 250 unemployment tax?
Yep.
The other one too.
I get a sense that you guys have communicated this amongst yourselves?
No, I got a circle around it.
Yeah, it says,
Just because he said he noticed something, and he said, yeah, that was 41.
We talked about
I
it
had a
last
note
week.
from it for last week.
Yeah, I got a circle.
yeah, we
around
all have it highlighted from last week's
Yeah.
discussion, because I have it too.
We do that in Google Docs.
Yeah, under the 50-250, there's a note that says actual is 4481 and budgeted is 5318, so what's the difference there? The difference is $837. Is there a motion to reduce that line by $837?
Which line are you on?
50-250 unemployment tax?
5250?
50-250.
And we're just going by the notes that the, so,
I made a motion.
Andrew's made a motion, is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded, is there any further discussion?
What's the number?
50-250,
Yeah, what are we voting on? What number?
$837
we are reducing $837 to make it
Number in the budget.
4481,
How much?
4481. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, that's fine, that's it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. And same thing, looking down, 60-260, workers' compensation insurance, there's a note that says the actual annual contribution is 66,626, which is up from 61,691. And so let me figure out what that is.
Is that correct, Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
So that is an increase of, I have $4,935.
So the new line of 260 would be,
66,626.
No.
we got to do 44,166 plus.
If you just refresh, it's
Ray.
49,101 is
Okay.
your adjusted total.
I use Ray as the cheat sheet.
49,101 is the new.
I'll make a
okay.
motion to increase line 260 by $4,935.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Further discussion? And this is just making the line what the actual bill is. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously, so that's 49,101 is the new total for that
Put in my
one.
word, Mr. Byron.
It was made by Andrew and seconded by
Frank.
Frank, yes.
Okay, I thought I heard it right.
Yeah, no, you weren't hallucinating.
Refresh, not refreshing.
So that's a net increase in this account of $4,098. Any further changes on personnel? All right, moving on to road agent, 4311.1. Any changes here?
I'd like to make a motion to reduce line 310, consulting engineer services by $2,000.
There's a motion to reduce line 310 by $2,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Yeah, could you make the motion to the new number rather than the reduction in the future?
Sure, it's to
That's really what we're voting on.
$13,000.
It was $13,000.
$13,000.
And this is just, we're in the discussion part, right?
Yep.
And this is just to align to actuals. We had a bit of a discussion last week regarding what the right number is. This is what I believe the right number is.
Any further discussion? Hearing none? Hearing none, all those in favor of reducing line 310 by $2,000 to a new total of $13,000, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So it passes 7-2. Any further changes on road agent's budget? I know there was a question about propane.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't we talk about propane? It was between there and the town hall.
I know there was a question, what was the right number? So does anybody have anything there?
There's two different numbers used throughout the budget, so I
Mhm.
don't know
Yeah.
if we have an idea.
So he's at 4,000 now with another month and a half to go,
I
so.
don't know what it is though, because we have to each one.
We have 4,003 now, he budgeted 5,000. He's asking for 6 for next year,
What's the current pricing, does anybody know?
wasn't it?
I think it's 411.
I wrote it somewhere from last week.
I had $1.69 under Parks and
it's-
Rec,
I-
and $1.95.
$1.95 was the other one.
A road agent, so if you go to $1.69, there's a cut. You go to $1.95.
So, Mr. Hope, do you happen to know the correct?
285.
That would be a gallon of gasoline.
Yeah.
The day before yesterday, I paid $2.75.
Then you have to factor in the state taxes come off that number, right?
Not for propane, yeah.
No, you lose having gas.
I know, it's only energy we
Think of all
can't
the money we
reconfigure.
save you in the budget.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm not carrying numbers here. I would assume the low number is wrong.
Of course.
No kidding.
Below
Of course you would.
I would assume the low number is wrong.
Well, based on, is that reverse psychology?
30
That's what I use with my kids, so I'll go with 1.69.
Garage heat, I mean, 3,200 gallons to heat that garage?
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And they open the garage door on the end.
And it's
That is
really
the heat.
inefficient, but, look.
He's over on every other item too, though, so, year to date, anyways.
Well, reducing it to the
Back to 5,000?
$1.65 is $5,400, so it would be a reduction of $600, if you want to go with that. And you said what, we're right on target at,
He's at 4,000 now. But, I mean, I don't know how many gallons that is, and I'm sure $1,000 to fill that tank is probably within reason. But he's asking for 6.
Make a motion.
Make a motion to keep it at 5,000.
Second.
a motion has been made and seconded to keep line 411 propane gas at $5,000, which is a reduction of $1,000. Any further discussion?
When is 411 paid through?
What, sorry?
411, so the propane line, what's
Yeah,
the
that's-
latest bill you have for that?
Last bill I had in there was 1031. So.
And what's the current expense? Sorry?
He's at 4,003.
$4,003.
4,003, because I had 3,902
That must be last week.
as of 9:30. So you had a $100 fill up?
Yeah, we had a 61.4 gallon.
That doesn't sound right.
Filled up for the winter.
Don't use any propane. in the
It
summer
wasn't
months.
very cold this summer.
I'm with you, but my bill was a lot
seriously.
higher than $100.
Yes.
That's only for the heat. That
Yeah.
only heats that garage. Propane doesn't do anything else in there.
It
Yeah.
was $100 and it was 64 gallons.
Yes, so that would be 1.648 on that one.
So,
So that must be the
So you have figured out my reverse psychology that the most recent one was the low price, so. I happen to have the detail broken out on this one. So,
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, account 411, propane heat, a reduction of $1,000, making that line $5,000. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any
No.
opposed?
Aye.
Let's see, 5-3. The motion passes.
So that button's not that budget to last year.
That was seconded by
Thank you.
Bill.
They give it to us.
This may not have any
We,
bearing on anything, I'm just curious.
do we contract that?
The highway garage has one propane tank off to the side that's dedicated to the garage. The town hall has one big propane tank off to the side somewhere. Talent hall has a propane tank there, so it's all propane, each individual tank. Is that correct?
yeah.
Everything's run by, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know who to look at. So it's all run by gas. And none of them, as opposed to electric, none of them have meters on them, right, to say how many gallons are being
You don't
pumped
use
out.
meters on the propane tanks, you just fill
I
them.
know when it gets empty. That's,
And you watch how much is in them, and you
Right.
fill them when you need to fill them. And in some cases, what you do is you have just a standard delivery, and they top them off.
the only reason I'm asking, we have this conversation every year, right? And we're gonna continue to have this conversation, how much we use, because we don't really know how much we use in a year, we just know how many fill-ups we get in a year, which may or may not translate to gallons used.
You do know how many.
Yeah, how many gallons?
Yeah, I mean, I know how many gallons I've used year to date.
How much you filled into a tank.
Right.
No, it's how much.
But then we have the question, did you fill it in December 31st or January 1st? So, a bit, you know.
So it's really not, but that's fine, I'm just asking, and I know you can't get the actual without a meter, because a meter on January 1st, you push the button, you reset it to 0, and then you go look at it on December 31st, and that tells you.
Propane
But even if
propane
we-
doesn't work that
Even
way.
if we had a meter.
Yeah, it's not like.
And even if we had a meter, the problem is, when I have today's temperatures of 60 degrees, it's gonna go slow. And when it hits the polar vortex, it's gonna look like a Ferris wheel.
Absolutely. But of course, then you could match it, you can close the loop, you know the average temperature throughout the year, and you know how many gallons you use, and it should work out, that's fine, I was just asking a question. Because you know why? This conversation's gonna happen again next year.
All right,
It
road
happened last year and 2 years ago.
Hopefully, somebody else who's sitting in my seat will give you,
I'm just trying to look forward, that's it.
I have been trying for 4 years to find the right answer to this question. I have failed
And
miserably
you know
every
what?
year.
So am I, quite honestly, and it's a very tough decision, or a tough answer to find.
if you wanna know how much is used, what you have to do is look at each fill-up, figure out the number of gallons that were added to the tank.
That's right.
And there you go.
You have to look at, well, exactly, it's the same, it was
And
what I
then you'll
just
have to
said.
come up with an average daily temperature.
It's what I just said,
So that you can
it's a
get-
meter. So on December 31st, you look how much is in the tank.
Chris, that's your homework.
So, we'll be glad to let you come in the town hall and you can sit, go through the propane bills.
I'm okay having the conversation again next year, that's fine.
All right,
The
so,
problem is, you can look at a propane tank gauge, and it'll say read 30 or 40.
I know, and it's not accurate,
It's not, because each time they fill at 30 or 40, it varies so
You're right.
greatly.
you're right.
all right, so the road
temperature will
agent
change that gauge range.
budget was
exactly
reduced
right.
by a total of
Same on oil.
$3,000. Any other changes? Moving right along. Next is road maintenance. Highways and streets, 4312.1. Any motions to change anything here? Anybody? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to Parks and Recreation, 4520.1. Any motions to make any changes here?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying yes to a motion, I have a question regarding the bid process. Did they open those up?
I think they did. Nobody's given me a report back, so unfortunately, I can't tell you.
So you don't know?
Supposed to have that tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Tuesday was a holiday, and I was at conference the past 2 days, so if nobody gave it to me, I don't have it, so.
I'd like to make a motion to defer the voting on this until we get their report.
Well, we kind of do anyways, because we're going to revisit all of these back on January 6th. So it's automatically deferred.
Motion accepted.
Hey, we can vote on it if you want. Is there a second to deferring further discussion? We can take this up next week if you want,
I'll motion the table.
okay? I kind of think that's what Ray was doing.
If Ray's doing that, then fine, I'll second it.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 8-1.
Somebody had to do it.
So what we'll do is we'll bring Parks and Rec up again next week. All right, that is the end of voting for tonight. Moving on to member input, new business. We do have a schedule from the school district. Thank you. So, next week, we should receive our budgets on the 20th. My understanding is the superintendent is going to try to get us on the 18th, the executive summary and the superintendent's strategic plan. So we will be able to hear and discuss that on the 20th. Then we are off for the week of Thanksgiving, and coming back on December 2nd, we'll start with school board SAU curriculum. Vote that on the following Thursday, and that Thursday we'll review CHS, which we'll vote on the 9th, right down the line, LMS, GMS, technology, building, grounds, and transportation, special services is the last one, and then warrants, and again, warrants and everything will be finally voted on Thursday, January 8th.
Refresh my memory. See, didn't we have a week between presentation and voting last year?
Yeah.
We may have. I think what we're doing it different this year
Yeah, it
because
really is.
we're gonna do, we're gonna hold off on final bottom line voting until January 8th. So if you want to do it differently, let's discuss that. And we can do a week in between.
Good night.
I'm just trying to think this through, Cindy. Let's just take December 2nd. We go over the school board, the SAU curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Then what do we do on the 4th, Thursday?
We would receive a presentation on CHS, but we would not vote on school board SAU and curriculum. We would vote on December 9th.
On school board and curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
we'd vote on that when?
On December 9th. So that would give you your week.
But that's not the way this is, though, right?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, I'm saying if that's how you wanted to do it, if you wanted a week in between, that's gonna push it out.
Well, I'm just coming back to your thought on, we're gonna hold off on bottom line voting until the very end of the year,
Mm-hmm.
end of the season.
So,
So if we go on a Tuesday, Thursday, what's the purpose of the Thursday meeting on the school board SAU? It sounds like it would just be another rehash of the discussion.
You're gonna do exactly what you just did tonight with the budgets.
Pardon?
You're gonna do what you just did tonight with the town budgets.
Yeah, we would go through.
Last week you viewed them, instead of a week apart, it's 2 days apart.
So we would review them. We'd come back on the Thursday, and anybody
to
make any
sleep on it.
changes or adjustments, but the bottom line would
Don't
hold
kill
off.
me. I just want to understand
Yep.
how we're gonna handle this.
so would that mean that you would be doing, or we would be doing, I should say, special services, which you're gonna review on the,
16.
okay, 16th, you'll vote the 18th, okay.
Mhm.
But you won't have a week on that. When are you gonna do technology in buildings, grounds,
December
transport?
11th.
We would hear it December 11th, we would vote December 16th.
Okay, so you're only gonna do 2 days in between, that's fine.
Yeah, we're doubling up in the month of December.
Yeah, and if there's an issue, we need more information, we just table it until the following week, so that's
Yep.
okay.
And so also in the mix, so next week where we're receiving the budget and having the executive summary, we will be voting on these last items we heard from the town. And then December 11th, the town is scheduled to bring their warrants to us. So in addition to hearing technology, building and grounds, transportation, and voting on LMS and GMS, we will be at least hearing the warrants, or presented the warrants from the town.
I have a question regarding the town budget.
Mhm.
It may or may not be unfinished business, and I'm trying to figure out how to bring it up. We were, with the information technology budget, we took out $12,000 for a IT manager stipend. And I had asked a question. I said, you know, what is the number to cover, you know, for the contracted computer services? Because we need to make sure the IT is taken care of, and at this stage, I don't know if it is. So I want to know what is the direction of the Board of Selectmen, where are we going with that? Because are we going to be left uncovered now?
Well, that's something they're gonna have to decide, and if they choose to come back with a warrant article, then that will be something that I would assume they would present on December 11th. But I mean, in the meantime, it's up to them to figure out what to do with that.
And that's why only because of this specific situation, it's sticky. But like anything else, if we thought a line was too high, we would try and attempt to amend to reduce it. But if we think a line is too low, we would amend to raise it.
Yep.
Now, everybody here knows that I am not a computer guy. But I could tell you, $6,000 is too little for the IT. But then I've heard numbers, you know, Mr. Lemire said his town in Northwood runs at $25,000 a year. I heard Steve Perry the other night say it could be $100,000. I've heard $60,000. I've heard $80,000. I don't know what the number is, but I think we all agree $6,000 is too low.
Well,
So,
I think where that's gonna come out on the wash, I mean, that's why we are holding off till January 6th to vote a bottom line in the town budget. So in the meantime, if you re-crunch stuff and you think that bottom line needs to be something other than where we are tentatively sitting right now, that would be the time to bring it up.
and I would like to ask for some direction, because I don't know what a right number is. When I heard anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000, so,
Well, I believe the vote that the committee took was that the stipend did not belong in the operating budget, that it should go before the voters.
As a new position.
Ask them. And in that case, if the selectmen choose to do that, they'll bring a warrant article forward and discuss with us what the right number is from their point of view, and then you'll have that number.
Well, they
But
may or may-
we won't be
yeah.
changing, but the committee, as of right now, has said that position doesn't belong in the operating budget.
correct, because I think we
Well,
all...
the committee said that a reduction of $12,000 was appropriate. There were a variety of reasons for making that
Yeah,
decision.
Cindy, don't get me into it.
I'm just, you know, I want to make sure, yeah, I would like if they did bring a warrant, or the right number in contracting services, just because I think it was clear that this committee would probably not recommend the budget if that was in there as is. So I'm just, that's my I want to fund that line properly under contracted services. I don't know what that number is.
And I will tell you that there's no way to get to that number unless they have a detailed plan of what they're gonna do.
Right.
Because if you're gonna hire it under contracted services, what it's gonna cost is directly related to what what you've got planned to do. So if you're gonna do 15 desktop upgrades
Right.
and they're gonna cost 3 hours apiece to do, it's 3 times 160 and you got a number.
And that's why I'm asking, because obviously, and I can't obviously direct the Board of Selectmen to do anything, but I would hope that a plan would come forward, so we all know what we're talking about, so the right number could be there. Nobody's arguing that we shouldn't be funding IT. It's just there's various reasons, like you just said. So I hope the homework is being done to where we do get a detailed plan so we can properly fund it.
And I'm quite certain it's being done, and that's why we held off on the bottom line voting this year, because that's what happened last year. The selectmen heard all of our rationale, went back and made changes, and at the 11th hour brought the changes back to us, and there was a little bit of anger at having to go back and change everything. So I'm assuming they're doing the same thing. They're gonna take all the information from our discussions and maybe make changes, maybe not, but that way our bottom line voting, they'll have the opportunity to make a, new rationale for
Okay.
whatever they want. So just on the school, anything else,
So we're meeting on we're definitely meeting on January 6th for the town. I just want to make sure I put it in my calendar appropriately.
January 6th?
He said January.
6th.
You said
January, I'm looking at this going, I don't see December.
No, this is the school,
Yeah,
but January 6th we are going to meet for the
January 6th is the town, and January 8th is the last votes for the school district. Yep.
When we're in, I don't know, are we in member input? Because I did have something.
Yep, now I'm done with the school district budget review, member input.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I had asked for Jason to give us an estimate of town valuation, and forgot to ask him before I left again tonight. Could you forward that to him? He was gonna work a number up,
Oh, you're estimated, okay, yeah.
yeah. And if possible, just circulate it via the chair to us.
Yeah. I'm on.
Somebody go. Just a quick summary. Last week I provided an update, this week I'll provide an update as well. In terms of actual budget reductions that we've made, we're now at $35,354.12. That's actually an increase, not of $1,198, so it's the opposite direction. So last week we were at 36,400 and change, this week we're at 35,300 and change.
Gotcha. Tonight was a good session, and this board works well, I believe, together, along with the other reps, and there are some heated discussions, and I think we can point to a couple weeks ago, which is, in my book, is still totally fine. It's what we're supposed to do. But I have a serious concern that I want to express with this board, and before I get to my concern, I want to say, when you watch the Board of Selectmen meetings, Mr. Byron does a fantastic job describing what happened at this board to his board members. He's calculated, he's direct, he's fair, he's measured, he does justice to what happens here. But my concern is with Selectman Lemire.
Madam Chair, I don't think this is appropriate.
I think it is. He's an elected individual.
This
and
is
he
outside the scope of the Budget Committee.
He is saying that he is ashamed of this board. He is saying that we have lost direction.
Madam Chair?
He is saying that we have lost our
Subjecting
mission.
the town to potential lawsuit.
All right.
He is an elected individual.
Hold on. If these were comments that were made during a public session of the
Yes.
selectmen, then reporting to the board what was said, I don't think is any.
First off, this is hearsay, number one.
You can watch the video.
Number two, Mr. Lemire is not a member of this board. And to get into commenting on any potential discussions that occurred at other board meetings is inappropriate for the Budget Committee.
I will stop talking, Cindy. I'm done with it. I would like to invite Mr. Lemire to this meeting, if that's okay. So, Mr. Byron, if you could, maybe you can come as a selectman and voice his opinions about what's going on at this meeting. Is that appropriate?
I think that if someone has comments about how this board is conducting itself, I do think it is something that this board should be aware of.
So do I.
If you as an individual have a concern about what he's saying, then I think you need to express it at a selectmen's meeting. So I mean, for informational reasons, I would certainly like to know if there's a member of the selectmen that has a concern about what we're doing, because I think that can only help us maybe do a better job.
Watch the meeting and you can see it
Just gonna ask,
exactly.
is the meeting posted at Peg Central?
It should be by now, yes.
I believe
Oh,
it-
it is. You know
I
why?
believe
'Cause
it is.
I watched it again last night just to write the comments down, so I had them accurate.
Okay. Then
It was-
thank you for
it was
bringing it
toward
to our
the end.
attention, and any of us who are interested can then watch it. But I think if you...
Please do.
If you as an individual have a concern, then I do think that's something you need to bring up at the selectmen's meeting. And if I watch it and I have a concern, then I will also do the same
Thank
thing.
you.
And I think that's appropriate
Maybe it'll be a busy selectmen's meeting.
for change.
I just have one thing when it comes to the cost of gasoline. We got that report from Frank. I think if you continue to watch the trending a little bit, today on the Business Insider, the article that it was, the world will soon be awash with oil. And they're talking about the price for that. They didn't think the price was gonna get down to $80 a barrel until 2016, and it did that yesterday, or $80 a barrel. They're looking at $70 a barrel by the end of 2016. So,
Some speculators saying 50.
pardon?
Some are saying 50.
Yeah, so we're seeing,
All over.
we're gonna see oil prices go down, but there's a few things that could impact that, you know,
A
which.
war.
Yeah.
And I
Euros.
think that was the information that Mr. Byron forwarded us. I think the new estimate was 294 on that, if I remember correctly.
Well, that was on
Well,
gasoline, but gasoline's
Gasoline.
directly, I mean, that was for the spot for a month, where they're looking at that, but if you look at the long haul for the next year or two in energy, which is anybody's guess, it does look like it's still going down, and will be.
I can only state that if I have to pick a number, and I understand there's all types of people out there throwing darts at a board, I would prefer to use a number that the government is standing behind. And that number, if you look at it, spread across the year, it goes up and down by seasonal, and you can see the variation. I sent everybody a copy of it. I average it out for the whole year is $2.94. Use $3, use $2.94, or whatever, but I think at
Then-
least
then
it's
take
something
up-
I feel comfortable.
Yeah, then take out
Putting
the
the-
20-cent state tax, and we know what we're paying for.
That's the retail price, that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
I would be happy using that
22.
number also.
.4.
I would be happy using that number also. That seems accurate to me. There'll be spikes because it's gonna go down and then it goes back up again when they go to the winter blend.
And I think the government data shows that, because depending upon when they switch over to different, as you said, blends and everything
Right.
else, I think it's,
Just the current trend is pointing to energy costs going down, at least for the near term.
yeah.
But that takes another $4,000 out of what we already cut from the gas thing, basically.
Jason said he's happy with 290, whatever, 294 is what I said, I think.
All right, any other member input?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
December 16th, I will not be able to attend the Budget Committee meeting, so the Board of Selectmen will send somebody in my stead.
Could I recommend somebody? No.
I will check and see. Last I checked, he was unavailable.
All right.
Actually, I didn't check, the chairman checked.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be busy with his own town budget.
Anything else? All right, hearing nothing then, our last community input. No one's running through the door to chat with us, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All
Nobody
those in
wants to go.
favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I watched.
Yeah.